Hey Mike, I heard you totally bailed on today's meeting. Because of that, the deal's off. They said they can't work with a company that has employees who can't keep their promises twice. There's a reason for that. Shut up. You're fired. Don't bother coming in tomorrow. The call abruptly ended. I stood there, stunned, staring blankly at the darkened screen of my phone. I had been on my way to a critical business meeting when I got delayed helping a woman. My tardiness angered the client, and the deal that was supposed to secure the future of our company completely fell through. Little did I know at the time, this event would be the catalyst for a major turning point in my life. The company I worked for specialized in home-cooked meals. Our motto was add a little extra to family time, and we prided ourselves on offering products free of artificial coloring and preservatives. With low salt, sugar, and fat, perfect for families with young children. Though it was a small business, our unique products were resonating with customers, and sales had been steadily climbing. As a sales rep, my job was to visit grocery stores and department stores, persuading them to carry our products. Today, I was scheduled to meet with a major up-and-coming supermarket chain, JNU, to ask them to stock our items. Well, not just today, it's been over a month of non-stop attempts to get them on board. JNU was known for its bargain prices, and they kept turning us down, saying our products didn't match their lineup. However, JNU's success has been remarkable. Both Mr. Brooks and I are confident that if we can get our products on their shelves, our sales will undoubtedly soar. Mr. Brooks had high hopes for me, saying, "The future of our company is riding on this." I knew I had to give it my all. I found myself walking along the cherry blossom-lined street that stretched between J&U's headquarters and my office. The blossoms were about 70% in bloom. As I shuffled along, disheartened by another unsuccessful meeting, I noticed a family having a picnic beneath the trees. They had spread out a colorful mat and were enjoying rice balls and side dishes. When I realized the side dishes were from our company, I stopped in my tracks. A little boy, smiling, said, "This food is so good," and his parents and younger sibling beamed with happiness. The scene made it look like the family was enveloped in a warm, glowing light. Watching them, I felt a warmth spreading through my own chest. I had lost both of my parents when I was young. I was taken in by relatives, but I always felt like an outsider, treated cautiously, though not outright coldly. That's why I enrolled in a boarding high school, eager to escape that environment. Since then, I've been on my own. I haven't visited those relatives even once since I left their house. They haven't reached out either, and I'm pretty sure they were relieved when I left. Because of that, I've always had a deep longing for the kind of close-knit family I never had. When I was in elementary school, I often fantasized about having a family like that, but I stopped dreaming once I hit middle school. I finally understood that no matter how hard I tried, it was something I would never have. Enjoying family time as if it were the most natural thing in the world is a true blessing. I wanted others to keep experiencing that kind of happiness. That's why I joined my current company, to play a part in making that possible. Telling myself there was no time to be discouraged, I snapped out of it and headed back to the office. I was determined to return to J&U's headquarters the next day. I was willing to go as many times as it took until we landed that contract. The next day, as usual, I arrived at J&U's headquarters and asked the receptionist to call Alyssa, the person in charge. When I entered the familiar meeting room, Alyssa was already sitting on the couch, shooting me a cold glare. "You're persistent, aren't you? How many times do I have to explain that your products don't align with what we offer?" As soon as I sat down across from her, that's the first thing she said. I bowed my head and pleaded, Our products are designed for families. Most of your customers are families too, right? We're targeting the same group. It's about the price. Your products are too expensive, Alyssa said, shaking her head as if exasperated. I overheard something. You don't have parents, do you? I heard you went to a boarding school and joined your current company right after graduation. It's honestly off-putting to hear someone who's never known the warmth of a family try to sell me on the idea of family bonding. It feels like a complete farce. Her words struck me hard, a deep pain throbbing in my chest. I clenched my hands tightly on my knees. That's exactly why, I said. Because I don't know what it's like to have a family, I understand how precious it is. Yes, our products are a bit expensive, but the quality and taste are guaranteed. We have many repeat customers at other stores, and I'm confident your customers will love them too. It won't be a loss to stock them. I bowed my head again. Just then, I heard the door to the meeting room open. Come on, Alyssa, don't be so hard on him. Mr. Matthews. Alyssa's voice was flustered, and I looked up. There stood Mr. Matthews, the CEO of JNU. Alyssa, who had been looking down on me just moments before, quickly changed her attitude. She stood up from the couch and gestured for Mr. Matthews to take his seat. Her face was now lit up with a bright smile. Mr. Matthews sat down on the couch and looked at me, still in shock. I liked what you said earlier. If you're that passionate, we'll give your products a shot. I blinked in surprise at his sudden words. Alyssa, equally taken aback, blurted out, Mr. Matthews, in a scolding tone. He waved her off with one hand. You'll still be handling the negotiations, Alyssa, he said. Alyssa raised one eyebrow slightly at Mr. Matthews' words. However, she simply pressed her lips into a straight line and, without saying anything, gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. Overcome with gratitude, I blurted out, "Thank you so much," and bowed deeply. Mr. Matthews, still young, let out a hearty laugh and gave me 2 strong pats on the shoulder as encouragement. When I returned to the office and reported to Mr. Brooks that we'd secured a deal with JNU, he praised me enthusiastically, "Well done." 2 days later, I was heading to JNU's headquarters for a meeting with Alyssa, scheduled for 2 p.m. As I walked confidently down the path lined with pale pink flowers in full bloom, I spotted someone collapsed at the base of one of the trees. Startled, I rushed over and helped the person up. It was a woman, so beautiful that for a moment I thought she might be some spirit of the cherry blossoms. Her pale face was alarmingly blue. I pulled out my phone to call an ambulance, but in my panic, I fumbled and dropped it on the ground. When I picked it up, the screen was shattered and completely black. I held the power button, but nothing happened. Looking around, I realized no one else was nearby. With no other choice, I carried the woman to the hospital. When I tried to leave her in the care of the doctors, they said, "You must be family. Please wait here," and I was stuck waiting. I thought about using a public phone to call, but I didn't remember Alyssa's number. I resigned myself to waiting in the lobby. Eventually, the woman, now accompanied by a nurse, approached me. Her face was still pale, but she looked slightly better than when I'd found her. After the nurse left, she bowed her head to me. "I'm so sorry for all the trouble." "No, don't worry about it." "Are you okay?" "Yes, thanks to you." At that moment, I glanced at the clock and saw that my meeting time had long passed. I let out a sigh without thinking. The woman looked at me apologetically. I quickly said, "It's fine," and repeated it again, telling her I had somewhere to be before rushing off. I ran as fast as I could to J&U's headquarters. When I asked for Alyssa, she arrived with a furious expression. Late, and without so much as a call, what exactly were you thinking? Do you really want to do business with us? I'm sorry, my phone broke. I don't need excuses. If this happens again, we'll cancel the deal. Frankly, I don't think we should be doing business with your company at all. You're just selling ideals with overpriced products, it's ridiculous. Do you even take business seriously? I couldn't lift my head, feeling utterly ashamed. But the last thing I wanted was for her to think our company didn't deserve the partnership. Desperate to salvage the situation, I clung to the fact that Mr. Matthews had liked me. Could I at least apologize to Mr. Matthews as well? Mr. Matthews is on a long vacation right now. Her sharp reply left me speechless. I had no choice but to return to the office, defeated. When I got back, Mr. Brooks called me in. J&U called. They said you didn't show up, what were you doing? I'm sorry, someone collapsed, and I. What? The meeting was more important. How many times did I tell you that the future of our company depends on this? Mr. Brooks slammed his hand down on the desk, and I flinched. Listen, if you mess up this deal, you're fired. He emphasized his point by tapping his finger on his neck, mimicking a cutthroat gesture. All I could do was mumble an apology. As I walked home through the now dark streets, I felt utterly defeated. I'd stopped to buy a new phone, which made me even later than usual. On top of that, I had no energy to cook dinner. I decided to grab instant noodles and headed to the nearby J&U supermarket. As I was browsing, deciding which one to get, I suddenly felt a light bump from below. I looked down to see a child sitting on the ground, having fallen on his bottom. His nose was bright red from the impact. Are you okay? I crouched down and offered him my hand. I'm fine, the boy said, taking my hand and getting up. Jack. I'm so sorry, he is my son. Oh. As his mother came rushing over, I realized it was the same beautiful woman I had helped earlier at the hospital. I hadn't expected to see her again, and my heart skipped a beat. I had secretly hoped we might meet again, but I never imagined it would happen so soon. Thank you so much for what you did earlier, she said, bowing her head once again. Her long, dark brown hair, tied back in a ponytail, bounced lightly as she moved. Once again, I replied, it's no problem. I glanced down and met the boy's eyes. He was holding the woman's hand tightly. Seeing them together, I realized that, of course, someone as beautiful as her wouldn't be single. My briefly lifted spirits sank. I tried hard to keep my expression neutral. Mom, do you know this guy? Yes, he's the person who saved my life. What does saved mean? He's like a hero. Wow, are you a hero, mister? That's so cool. The boy looked up at me with wide, sparkling eyes. Being called Mr. stung a little, but the admiration in his gaze didn't feel bad at all. My name is Sarah Matthews, and this is my son, Jack. Sarah gently patted Jack's head. Jack smiled shyly, clearly pleased. I introduced myself as well. I'd like to properly thank you. I wanted to say something at the hospital, but you seemed to be in a rush, so I didn't get the chance. I'm really glad we ran into each other here, Sarah said with a soft smile. I couldn't help but be captivated by her beauty for a moment. Would you like to come to my place? I'd love to treat you to dinner. It looks like you weren't planning on cooking tonight, were you? She glanced at the contents of my basket. Embarrassed, I felt my face flush. Sarah mentioned she lived in an apartment near the supermarket. It was small but clean and had good security. She seemed to be preparing a sabaro bowl with ground chicken, eggs, and spinach. But as I watched her cook, her hesitant movements, constantly checking the recipe, made me a bit nervous. "Would you like some help?" I offered. "No, no. This is my way of thanking you. Please, just sit down, Mike." Since she was so firm about it, I had no choice but to sit back and watch. When the dish was finally ready, some of the eggs and ground chicken were slightly burnt. The spinach was overly sweet, probably from too much sugar. Still, I ate it all. "I'm sorry it wasn't much of a thank you. I wish I could have taken you to a nice restaurant, but with a small child, it's hard," Sarah said, looking a bit apologetic as she glanced at Jack, who cheerfully exclaimed, "Thanks for the meal. More importantly, are you sure you're okay? You just collapsed earlier today." I lowered my voice so Jack couldn't hear. Sarah gave a wry smile. "I'm fine. I have to keep going. I'm the only one here to take care of Jack." I glanced around the room. There were signs of both Sarah and Jack's presence everywhere, but nothing that seemed to belong to a husband. What about your husband?" When I hesitantly asked Sarah, her expression became somber. "My husband passed away." "Oh, I'm so sorry." "I didn't mean to bring up something difficult," I stammered. "It's okay. I may seem like I'm doing it all alone, but honestly, I rely heavily on my brother." Sarah gave a small, playful smile. The contrast between her elegance and the warm smile made my heart skip a beat. "My parents died when I was young, so my brother took on the role of raising me. He probably wanted to go to college, but he started working right after high school. That job was just a stepping stone for him to start his own business. I ended up working with him. And now, his company has grown big enough to be considered one of the major players. You must be really proud of him," I said. "Yes, I am," she replied, puffing out her chest like it was her own achievement. It made me chuckle. "Your brother must be worried about you, knowing you collapsed, right?" Sarah's face clouded over. "I haven't told him. He's on vacation right now. His company finally stabilized, so he was able to take his first long break. And he's traveling through Europe with his family. A major company CEO, on a long vacation, with the last name Matthews." Suddenly, everything clicked. "Is your brother, by any chance, Mr. Matthews, the CEO of JNU?" "Yes." Sarah nodded, looking a bit puzzled. As I suspected, I couldn't hide my amazement at this unexpected coincidence. "Do you know my brother?" she asked. "Well, not personally, but I'm currently working on a deal with JNU." "Oh. So that's why you were in such a hurry earlier?" I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Sarah's shoulders slumped. Then, after taking a deep, slow breath, Sarah leaned in with a serious expression, firmly grabbing my hand. She smelled so good, I wondered if she was wearing perfume. My heart raced as if it might burst. "If this situation causes any trouble for you, please let me know. I'll talk to my brother and make it right," she said earnestly. "Oh, no, really. It's fine. I got scolded, but it looks like the deal will still go through. Plus, Mr. Matthews is eager to do business with us." "Is that so?" "If you're sure. I'd feel awful if anything happened to you because of me," she said, looking relieved but still concerned. "Honestly, don't worry about it," I reassured her. Finally, Sarah seemed convinced and slowly let go of my hand. I found myself missing the warmth of her touch, but suddenly I felt a pair of eyes on me. I looked over to see Jack staring at me with his big, round eyes. "Mister, you're a hero, right? What color are you?" He was obviously comparing me to the superheroes from the TV show he watched in the mornings. "I am green. Swift like the wind," I said, striking a dramatic pose. Jack's face lit up with excitement. "Yes. Green is my favorite. It just so happened green was my favorite too." I couldn't help but feel happy that we liked the same color. "And Mom is pink," Jack added, tugging on Sarah's arm. Sarah, eyes wide in surprise, stood up and struck a pose. "Calm like a forest," she said with a laugh. I clapped, and Sarah blushed a little. "You know a lot about superhero shows, Mike. You're single, right?" "Yeah, I'm single. Superhero shows are sort of a hobby of mine." Sarah's question made me feel a bit embarrassed, and I scratched my head. "Actually, like you, I lost my parents when I was young. I've always longed for that happy family life. I used to imagine having a family of my own, and in my daydreams, I'd play superhero with my future kids. That's how I got into watching these shows. Even though they're for kids, they're surprisingly well made, so I've kept watching them year after year." Sarah gave a soft laugh at my story, then lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry for making you remember something painful," she said. "Oh no, it's fine. If it really bothers you, just think of it as us being even. I asked you something personal too," I said with a grin, clapping my hands together. Sarah blinked, then smiled warmly. "All right," she said with a nod. We ended up spending hours talking, and before I knew it, it was past 9 p.m. Jack, after being scolded by Sarah, took a bath and went to bed. "Sorry for making you entertain Jack for so long," Sarah said apologetically. "Not at all. I had a great time. Plus, thanks for dinner," I replied. Sarah let out a relieved sigh. But I noticed she still didn't look completely well. "Make sure you get some rest too, Sarah. You need it," I said gently. "I will," she said, smiling softly. That smile stayed with me, warming my heart long after I left. I went to bed that night feeling like I could take on anything tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up refreshed and headed to work, feeling energized only to be greeted by Mr. Brooks' angry voice. "Go back and apologize for yesterday. If you don't close this deal, you're fired." Hearing the word "fired" again, my mood instantly plummeted. Dragging my feet, I made my way to J&U's headquarters. As a cherry blossom petal fluttered past, I thought of Sarah, and it gave me a little boost of motivation. When I arrived at J&U's entrance, I bowed to the receptionist. "I don't have an appointment, but I'd like to apologize for yesterday. Could you please ask Alyssa to see me?" The receptionist, looking sympathetic, called Alyssa for me. I was told to wait about 10 minutes, so I sat down on a nearby sofa. As I sat there, lost in thought, I suddenly caught sight of Sarah. She looked stunning in her suit, and I couldn't help but admire her for a moment. But then, her face twisted in pain, and before I knew it, she collapsed. "Sarah!" I rushed to her side. She was clutching her chest tightly, breathing heavily, and breaking out in a cold sweat. Her lips had turned a frightening shade of purple. The receptionist immediately called an ambulance. I completely forgot about my meeting with Alyssa and went with Sarah to the hospital. It turned out she was suffering from heart failure. She had been diagnosed with it the previous day after her initial collapse, and despite being told to rest, she had ignored the doctor's advice. I grew frustrated with myself for not noticing anything, casually barging into the room and enjoying dinner without a care. I had noticed her pale face. If only I had made sure Sarah got some rest. Regret started swirling inside me, tightening its grip on my chest. Sarah was admitted to the hospital. Relieved that she had pulled through, I felt my new phone vibrate in my pocket. It was Mr. Brooks. "Hey Mike. I heard you bailed on today's meeting. Thanks to you, the deal's off. They said they can't work with a company whose employees can't keep their promises twice. There's a reason for that. Shut up. You're fired. Don't bother coming in tomorrow." The call ended abruptly. I stood there in shock, staring blankly at the dark screen of my phone. Panicking, I tried calling Alyssa. She picked up, but her voice was filled with obvious irritation. "You had the nerve to ask for a meeting and then disappear? That's beyond unprofessional. I have no interest in doing business with you anymore. I'm really sorry, something came up and I had to leave. I told you before, I don't want excuses. It's clear you lack even the basic education to function as an adult, let alone a professional. I feel sorry for you growing up without parents, but that's exactly why I didn't want to work with you. Don't contact me again. And don't bother Mr. Matthews either. You're a nuisance." Just like with Mr. Brooks, the phone call was cut off. There really was no way forward anymore. I had failed at my job and been fired from the company. The realization slowly sank in, creeping up from the feet. It felt like I was being swallowed up by a swamp. As I slumped in the waiting room, a nurse came over and told me I could visit Sarah. Trying to shake off the heavy feeling that weighed me down, I made my way to her hospital room. When I entered, Sarah slowly sat up. "You don't have to get up," I said, but she quietly shook her head. Her face was completely pale. A thin, white arm was connected to and for. The last time I collapsed, they recommended I be hospitalized. I refused because of Jack, but this time, it seemed like hospitalization was unavoidable. Sarah's expression grew darker. "Do you want me to contact Mr. Matthews?" I asked. "Please don't," Sarah replied, looking up at me with teary eyes. "This is my brother's first trip with his family. I don't want to ruin it because of me." She gripped the bed sheets tightly. A single tear fell onto her hand. "I feel so pathetic. I can't even manage my own health properly. I'm a failure, both as a professional and as a mother. Jack doesn't have a father. So I have to work twice as hard, but I can't even do that," Sarah said, her body and voice trembling as she cried. She kept her head down, trying to hide her tears from me. After a brief hesitation, I nervously placed a hand on her shoulder. When she didn't push it away, I gently wrapped my arm around her back, softly patting her, hoping it would offer some comfort. Sarah kept whispering, "I'm sorry, Jack," over and over again. "Is there anyone who could look after Jack for a while?" I asked. Sarah shook her head without lifting her gaze. I let out a thoughtful hum. "If you'd like, I could take care of Jack for you. I'm pretty good at cooking, and with what I've learned from work, I can make healthy meals that are kid-friendly." Sarah turned her tear-streaked face toward me. Even with her face a mess, her beauty remained intact. "But I've already troubled you so much. I can't ask you for more. It's really no problem. We help each other out when we're in need, right?" I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze as she continued to hesitate. Thank you for your help. After a long pause, Sarah finally forced the words out. When I brought Jack to my apartment, he entered with a stiff expression and quietly said, "Excuse me," as he walked in. "You can treat this like your home for now, alright?" I reassured him. But unlike the cheerful boy I had met before, Jack didn't smile. He clutched his green superhero action figure tightly in his hand. Although I had offered to take care of Jack, living with him turned out to be challenging. He was quiet the first day, probably because he was in an unfamiliar place. But after a few days, once he got more comfortable, he started showing some stubbornness. "I don't want green peppers," Jack shouted, throwing the bell peppers from his chicken rice onto the floor. Sighing as I looked at the scattered vegetables, I saw Jack flinch and look up at me with fear in his eyes. "Hey, don't throw them. It's not nice," I said gently, picking up the peppers with a tissue. "They're not nice. I hate them." "But they're the same color as green," I pointed out. Jack pouted, his lips forming a stubborn line. That day, I gave up on making him eat the peppers. The next day, I made sweet and sour meatballs, hiding finely chopped bell peppers inside. Jack ate everything without noticing. "By the way, there were green peppers in those meatballs," I said after he finished. His eyes widened in surprise. "See? You ate them. That's amazing." When I patted his head, Jack blushed and said, "It was delicious. Do you think Mom will be surprised if I tell her I ate green peppers?" "Yeah, she'll be shocked." "Alright, before Mom gets back, I'm going to learn to eat bell peppers. I'll totally surprise her." Watching his bright smile warmed my heart. While this wasn't the family bonding I had always dreamed of, I realized that even without both parents, a sense of family togetherness could still be created. A few days passed since I started looking after Jack. With my job gone, I was able to dedicate my full attention to him. One evening, after putting Jack to bed, my phone suddenly rang. It was Mr. Matthews. "Hello? Hey, Mike, is this a good time? I know it's late. What's going on? Hey, is the deal going smoothly? I heard from Melissa that there's no issue, but I can't shake this uneasy feeling." Hearing Mr. Matthews's words, I caught my breath. But I quickly put on a calm front. "As Alyssa said, everything's going smoothly. So please, enjoy your family trip without worrying." "Oh, right. Wait, didn't I tell you?" Just as Mr. Matthews was about to say something, Jack's cries echoed from the bedroom. That crying. Sorry. I'm watching a relative's child right now. I've got to go calm him down, so I'm hanging up." After apologizing several times, I hung up the phone. Rushing into the bedroom, I found Jack sobbing loudly in the dimly lit room. "Mom, where's Mom?" My heart ached as I held Jack tightly, who was crying for his mother. He'd been pretending to be fine, but he wasn't at all. Realizing he had been holding it all in, I felt my eyes well up with emotion. "Mom's at the hospital. She's fighting off a bad illness right now. Mike, you're green, right? Can't you beat Mom's sickness?" His words hit me hard, and I felt a sting in my nose. Green's really good at rushing in to help people in trouble and fighting off tons of enemies. But when it comes to a tough, stubborn boss, that's where he struggles. "But your mom, she's pink, right?" "Right now, she's waiting for the right moment to fight back against that enemy. She's going to beat it and come home, I know it. So until then, how about we wait together?" As I gently patted his back, Jack seemed to understand, nodding with teary eyes. 2 days later, I took Jack to visit Sarah at the hospital. They told me I'm being discharged tomorrow, Sarah said softly. Hearing that, Jack's face lit up instantly. Mom, you beat the bad guys. With the Green Ranger vinyl figure in one hand, the one he insisted on bringing, Jack raised his arms in victory. Sarah tilted her head at his excitement. Actually, I began, about to tell her the story from the other day, when the sliding door to the hospital room opened. Standing there was Mr. Matthews. Beside him was a woman with a stern expression and a little girl. It was probably Mr. Matthews's wife and daughter. Why are you here? I thought you weren't coming back until the day after tomorrow? Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. Mr. Matthews glared at her. Of course I'd come back. My sister collapsed, after all. Sarah looked down, guilt shadowing her face. Mr. Matthews let out an exaggerated sigh. When I called Mike, he somehow knew I was on a family trip, and I could hear Jack crying over the phone. I figured something must have happened with Sarah, so I pressed the staff, and sure enough, he walked over to Sarah and placed his hand on the bed. Sarah, why didn't you tell me you collapsed? Sarah kept her head down. Her lips pressed tightly together. I couldn't stand to see her like that, so I took a step closer to Mr. Matthews. Sarah didn't want to trouble you, Mr. Matthews. She knew this was your first family vacation, and she didn't want to ruin it. Especially since you've taken care of her like a parent all these years. Mr. Matthews, still leaning on the bed, shot me a sharp look. I felt a bit intimidated by his gaze, but I stood my ground. This is really inconvenient. The voice came from an unexpected direction. Turning around, I saw Mr. Matthews's wife, Emily, frowning with her arms crossed, giving Sarah a stern look. She was beautiful, but her expression made her seem all the more intimidating. Sarah lowered her gaze even further under the weight of Emily's sharp look. Emily let out an exaggerated sigh. How long are you going to keep acting like a stranger? Am I the only one who considers both you and Jack part of this family? Sarah's eyes widened in surprise as she looked up. Emily tapped her fingers on her arm, a sign of her growing frustration. Then, she glanced over at Jack, who was playing with Mr. Matthews's daughter, Chloe. Jack was proudly showing off his Green Ranger action figure to her. Chloe, who hadn't watched the show, innocently asked, "What's so great about that?" The heroes in that show fight as a team, Emily continued. Each one has their strengths, and they rely on each other to cover their weaknesses. It's one for all, and all for one, right? Emily's gaze returned to Sarah. Her eyes, though sharp, were full of warmth. Sarah blinked in surprise. Even superheroes need help. We're just ordinary people, so we need others even more to get through life, don't you think? Stop trying to carry everything on your own. Let someone else handle what you're not good at. When you're struggling, rely on us. We're a family. The 5 of us, aren't we? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. And she began to sob, repeating "I'm sorry" over and over. Emily moved closer, gently stroking Sarah's head. This is when you say thank you, not sorry. Sarah cried even harder and whispered, "Thank you so much." Is Mom crying? Is Sarah hurt? Jack and Chloe ran over, concerned. With a soft voice, Mr. Matthews reassured them, "She's crying because she's happy." Watching the family bathed in warmth, it felt as though they were enveloped in a soft glow. The sight was so bright, I found myself squinting. Suddenly, Mr. Matthews looked at me and nodded toward the hallway. Once we stepped outside, Mr. Matthews bowed his head. "I'm sorry for what Alyssa did without my permission. Oh, no. I'm the one who messed up twice. I was late for our meetings, but both times it was because you were helping Sarah when she collapsed, right? If it weren't for you, she might not be here. I can't thank you enough. Mr. Matthews's expression softened. All I could do was shake my head. I've removed Alyssa from the project. The next person will handle the deal with you properly. You can count on that. I didn't know how to respond to that. It was hard to tell him that, since I'd been fired, I wouldn't be working on any deals anymore. What's wrong? Mr. Matthews, noticing my sudden silence, raised an eyebrow. It's okay, if you're struggling with something, just tell me. You're a part of our family now, and like Emily said, one for all. And all for one, right? Repeating Emily's words, he gave me a playful smile. Seeing that smile, I felt a little lighter. The truth is, I got fired. As I confessed, Mr. Matthews looked at me in shock. His expression quickly shifted to a more serious one. Really? They fired someone as capable as you? Seems like Mr. Brooks doesn't know talent when he sees it. Mr. Matthews stroked his chin thoughtfully for a moment before a mischievous grin spread across his face. Well then, how about you come work for me? What? Caught off guard by the unexpected offer, I couldn't help but let out a startled reply. You're the type who puts others first, even at your own expense. You didn't tell Alyssa you were helping Sarah, even though it would have worked in your favor. And you didn't mention it to me either, even though it could have saved you. You ended up losing because of that. I can't just ignore someone like you, someone who's too kind for their own good. Mr. Matthews's tone was serious as he said this. I felt a surge of warmth rise from deep within me. Even you, who says that, are quite the soft-hearted person. Trying to take in someone like me, I said, purposely using a teasing tone to downplay my feelings. But Mr. Matthews saw right through my act and slowly shook his head. No, you're a good man. Have some confidence. At the very least, my family needs you. The warm light that had surrounded Sarah and her family now seemed to shine on me, too. It was something I had given up on ever reaching. But here it was, so close. That same light was now shining on me. I couldn't hold back any longer. Tears began to spill uncontrollably. Mr. Matthews gave me 2 firm pats on the shoulder, as if to encourage me. Why not just go all the way and become part of the family? I think you and Sarah would be a good match. With a wide grin showing his white teeth, he said it so casually that I couldn't help but laugh through my sniffles. Taking Mr. Matthews up on his offer, I ended up working at JNU. Using the knowledge I'd gained from my previous job, I started working on selecting products for the store. Our business deal with my former company had been cut off. Apparently, Mr. Brooks had come back, trying to renegotiate the contract, but Mr. Matthews had turned him down flat. As Alyssa pointed out, their products don't really fit with what we sell. The only reason I even considered it was because I admired your approach. So, naturally, we cut ties. Mr. Matthews said with a smirk, his elbows resting on his desk. It was a mischievous smile. I could easily imagine Mr. Brooks sulking in defeat. Speaking of admiration, how are things going with you and Sarah? Huh? What do you mean? My face instantly flushed as the unexpected topic came up. Jack's pretty attached to you, and more importantly, Sarah doesn't seem to mind you, either. Really? Yeah, have some confidence. Mr. Matthews came over and gave me a strong pat on the back, encouraging me further. When I arrived at Sarah's place, Jack greeted me with a cheerful welcome back. It's welcome, not welcome back. Sarah gently corrected him, her cheeks slightly flushed. Jack pouted a bit. All right, I'll cook dinner. Sorry about that, just because I'm terrible at cooking. No need to say sorry. I teased her playfully, and she smiled with a slight nod. I'll help. Jack suddenly appeared in the kitchen. Calming Sarah, who was scolding Jack with a "don't get in the way," I decided to let Jack help out too. Since I decided on making omelette, I had him crack and mix the eggs. When the omelette was ready, we set it on the table. The smell of ketchup and freshly cooked eggs filled the room along with the warm steam. The three of us said, "Let's eat," in unison, and began our meal. Ah, nothing like a drink after hard work. Where did you learn to say that, Jack? Sarah laughed, clearly amused. After taking a bite of her omelette, she looked at me with a smile and said, "It's delicious." Just seeing that smile made me feel full. The table, surrounded by the three of us, was bathed in a warm, comforting light. After putting Jack to bed, I handed Sarah a freshly brewed cup of coffee. Thank you, Sarah said with a smile, taking a sip of her coffee. She let out a soft sigh of relief, holding the cup with both hands, gazing quietly at the surface of the black liquid. Our voices overlapped, and though I motioned for Sarah to go first, she encouraged me to speak instead. I think we both want to say the same thing. Her cheeks were flushed as she spoke. Steeling myself, I made up my mind. I then turned to face Sarah directly once again. Then, I bowed my head. Please, go out with me with marriage in mind. My voice, tense with nerves, echoed through the living room. I want to be part of your family, Sarah. I want to support you. And I'm sure there will be plenty of times when I'll need your support too. When I hesitantly looked up at her, Sarah's face had blossomed into a radiant smile. Yes, I won't hold back anymore. I'll rely on you, and I want you to rely on me too. We're already family. Her response made my heart leap, and I wrapped her in my arms. I had been alone for so long. I had always longed for a family, thinking it was something I could never have. But now, I wasn't alone anymore. Sarah, Jack, Mr. Matthews, Emily, and Chloe. We were a family of 6. We would support each other when someone was in need, and I knew they would be there for me when I needed them. With that thought, I made a firm vow in my heart to protect the warm light that surrounded us for the rest of my life. Are you looking for a wallet? When the girl asked me that, I was taken aback. She was clearly homeless, yet she was holding my wallet. Most likely, the contents were already gone. But despite the fact that I was the one who had definitely dropped it, she returned it to me without taking anything. I wanted to thank her, so I invited her to my home. If you'd like, would you come over so I can thank you properly? I offered her a bath, a meal, and a place to sleep, and then, 3 months later, a group of people in black suits arrived in a black car to see me. Would you please accept this check? But without thinking, I grabbed the man by the collar and yelled, "My name is Keith Carter. I'm an ordinary guy, just a regular office worker. I don't have any outstanding talents compared to others, but if I had to say, I'd describe myself as serious. I always complete the tasks assigned to me, so I guess I'm trusted at work." On this day, like any other, I went to work, but as I was about to head out for lunch, I realized something terrible. My wallet is gone. I wasn't carrying a lot of money, but it did have my living expenses for the month and my driver's license. A driver's license is important to prove one's identity. More importantly, if the license fell into the wrong hands, it could be misused. Even if the person who found it does nothing, there are brokers on the internet who buy driver's licenses. Those who sell them may feel guilty, so they sell them cheaply, and they end up being used for crimes. They even mentioned it in a recent documentary I watched about real-life cases. If a license falls into the hands of a criminal, they might take out a large loan from a consumer finance company, forge credit cards, or sell it on the black market. This area is relatively safe, but it's not guaranteed. Where is it? Where did I lose it? Since I don't commute by train, it's unlikely I was pickpocketed on my way to work. I definitely put it in my bag when I left home this morning. Where could it be? Think back over today's actions. I woke up early today and bought a sandwich and coffee from a food truck in the park. I ate on a bench, and after that, did I put my wallet back in my bag afterward? No, I was holding the sandwich and coffee in both hands, so maybe I dropped it there. If I left it at the food truck, the staff would have noticed. Oh, I need to look for it on my way back. But before that, I need to do something to prevent the misuse of my driver's license. They mentioned this on TV too. First, I called the nearest police station to report that I had lost my driver's license and filed a loss report. This way, in case of any trouble, I can claim I reported it lost, which might help avoid any large charges. It might seem like there's not much you can do in the short time between morning and noon, but there's no harm in reporting it. If it's found, I can just tell the police it was found, and even if it's misused between morning and noon, there will be a record to help address the issue. Okay, we have accepted your loss report. Feeling relieved at their response, I decided to stop by the park on my way back and search, then resumed my work in the afternoon. After finishing work on time, I stopped by the park to thoroughly search the area where I walked this morning. Since I made the payment at the food truck, I must have had my wallet at that point. I retraced my steps to recreate my movements. First, I bought a sandwich and coffee at the food truck, paid, and put it in my pocket. Did I? Which pocket was it? I reached into the pocket of my slacks where I thought I had put it. These slacks have pockets with vertical openings sewn along the side seams. They're good because they don't lose their shape, but you can't put a wallet in these pockets. Oh! I let out a small gasp. I was certain I had dropped my wallet right here. But it's hard to believe I wouldn't notice a wallet lying in the middle of the path in such a conspicuous spot. Surely, the wallet. Are you looking for a wallet? Hearing the voice, I turned to see a young girl standing quietly. She looked homeless at a glance. This park has some playground equipment for children. One of the pieces of equipment is shaped like an upside-down bowl, providing some shelter from the rain and wind, which might make it safer than other places. There's a water fountain here, and once a week, volunteers come to provide free meals. But none of that really mattered at the moment. Yes. Is it this? In response to my answer, the girl showed me what she was holding. It was undoubtedly the wallet I had lost. Yes, that's it. I felt a huge wave of relief upon seeing my wallet again after the whole morning. Your driver's license was inside this. Yes. Can you tell me your name and date of birth? If they match, I'll give it back to you. I thought she seemed like a cautious girl. Indeed, she had to consider the possibility that I might be lying just to get the wallet back. It's unfortunate, but there are certainly people who would do that. I'm Keith Carter. Okay. My date of birth is... As I began to speak, the girl glanced at the license and smiled slightly. No doubt about it. And the picture doesn't seem like a great one. Oh, that day. I had a stomachache. Wait, did you already know and just ask to confirm? Yes. The girl laughed and handed the wallet back to me. Thank you. I was worried because my driver's license was in there. You're welcome. Can I ask your name? I'd like to know the name of the person who helped me. It's Iris. Iris, thank you. You really saved me. I thanked her sincerely again. Taking another look at her, I noticed her hair was messy, and her clothes were in tatters. I didn't know how long she had been here, but she seemed pretty smart. She had common sense, and her language wasn't rough. Just in case, I checked the contents of the wallet and saw no signs that anything had been taken. It wasn't much money, but it was enough to buy dinner or even go to a public bath. Well, I'll be on my way. Wait. As Iris bowed and turned to leave, I instinctively called out to stop her. I want to thank you. Thank me? A meal, a bath, and a place to sleep. How does that sound? At my suggestion, Iris clutched the front of her shirt, looking a bit frightened. Seeing her reaction, I thought, huh? But then I quickly realized what it might look like. This is like one of those situations where a young girl is lured into someone's house for something bad. No, no, no. I have no ill intentions. Ha? Really? Purely. I just want to thank you. And if you don't trust me, you can even tie my hands. I blurted out defensively, and Iris looked at me, puzzled, before bursting into soft laughter. But it's only natural not to trust someone you've just met. What should I do? He. In that case, maybe we could go to, huh? Keith, you're a good person. If it's not too much trouble, may I accept your offer? When Iris said that, I felt relieved that the misunderstanding was cleared up. Besides, knowing that this young girl was homeless in a park, I couldn't just leave her like that. I smiled and said, of course, and decided to guide her to my apartment. Talking with her like this made me realize again, Iris is indeed intelligent and has a great personality. This made me even more curious about why she had ended up homeless. For now, I stopped by a nearby convenience store and had her do some shopping. I handed her my wallet and asked her to buy underwear and a change of clothes for herself. Because there's a bar district nearby, they sell simple changes of clothes as well. I suppose that's proof of people who, after a night of heavy drinking, end up vomiting and needing new clothes. After confirming Iris had finished shopping, we headed to the apartment where I live. The rent for this apartment is decent, and it comes with a separate bath and toilet, as well as a changing room. Most importantly, it has a private room in addition to the dining area, so I plan to offer that private room, which I use as a bedroom, to her. I guided Iris to the changing room and handed her a few freshly washed bath towels and new towels I kept for guests. I then told her she was free to use the soap and shampoo and hurried to the kitchen. After checking the fridge, I started making chicken soup. Chicken soup is filling and warms you up. With chicken, vegetables, macaroni, and some frozen mushrooms I had stored, it should be perfect. After adding a small side salad of lettuce and cucumbers that I had bought from the supermarket to balance the meal, Iris seemed to have finished her bath. I offered her a seat, and she sat down obediently, and we started eating together. Iris smiled and said the simple dinner was delicious, and she ate every bite. It had been a long time since I'd shared a meal with someone, and even this simple meal tasted better than usual. While eating, I noticed that Iris had what looked like a burn scar on her face. However, even with that scar, her features were so well proportioned that it didn't detract from her appearance. After getting cleaned up in the bath, I realized just how beautiful Iris was, and it surprised me. This only made me more puzzled as to why someone like her would be homeless. Her table manners were also good. Maybe she had been living with someone until recently. Hey, Iris. Yes? I'm sorry if this offends you, but I wanted to ask. Iris, have you been living with someone until recently? I wasn't sure if that someone was her parents or relatives. But Iris looked young. If she were a minor, it would be unthinkable not to have someone looking after her. Yes, you're right, Keith. Then, Iris began to share her story. It was just 3 months ago that I started living in that park, becoming homeless. She spoke in a calm, steady voice. Iris, you're underage, right? How old are you? Oh, wait, is it rude to ask a woman her age? Hee hee, I don't mind. I'm 18. So, you're a high school student? No, I never went to high school. I've been working part-time since I graduated from middle school. There are several reasons why someone might work after only finishing middle school. Maybe her family is poor, or perhaps her parents passed away early. Is it okay if I ask why? Yes. Iris nodded and continued her story. My parents were, well, what people call toxic parents. They were heavy drinkers, always drinking, even in the middle of the day. Drinking during the day suggests they didn't work. They might have worked night shifts, but if that were the case, there wouldn't have been a reason for Iris to stop at middle school. They spent all the money they had on alcohol, always drinking. Sending me to high school was never an option. My middle school teacher, Mr. Murphy, told them I could go on a scholarship, but my parents said if she works instead of going to high school, she'll make money, and chased him away. That's truly the worst. They kept debating about it until the very last minute, which delayed my job search. So, I had no choice but to juggle multiple part-time jobs. That's awful. But even the money I earned was taken from me and used for alcohol. Even if I tried to hide it, they would find and spend it. So I couldn't buy new clothes and ended up wearing hand-me-downs from middle school. Indeed, the clothes Iris was wearing seemed neither the right size nor suited for the season. And then, 3 months ago, an incident occurred that led to me becoming homeless. Due to my parents' carelessness, I got scalded with boiling water on my face. Boiling water? That day, my parents were fighting. I thought if I didn't intervene, it would disturb the neighbors, so I tried to stop them. But I got pushed, and the boiling water from the kettle on the stove spilled on me. It was so hot and painful, I screamed. Even a small splash of boiling water on your finger hurts terribly. Having it on your face, that's unimaginable. And for a young girl's face, of all places. A woman's face is so important to her. Just thinking about the despair she must have felt at that moment made my blood boil. I screamed loudly, and the neighbors rushed over. They tried to call the authorities. But my parents didn't like that and reluctantly took me to the hospital themselves. At least she got to the hospital. They must have given her some medication and explained the treatment options. At the hospital, they said I had deep partial thickness burns, which are second-degree burns. I'm not sure of the exact term, but they said it would take 3 to 4 weeks to fully heal. They mentioned the cost of treatment, but I didn't hear it. Second-degree burns. I don't know much about burns, but I know enough to understand they shouldn't be left untreated. Even minor burns that cause blisters shouldn't be ignored, and second-degree burns, which affect deeper layers of the skin, require urgent treatment. If left untreated, the scars could turn into raised, red keloids or hypertrophic scars. Hypertrophic scars are hard, raised areas of skin that can sometimes be painful or itchy. I know this because my father once suffered a burn like that. It took a long time to heal, and even now, he still has keloids, but since they're not in a visible place and he's a man, he laughed it off as not bothering him. But Iris is a young girl, and it's her face. The doctor said that if I received proper treatment, the scars wouldn't be permanent, but my parents probably didn't want to spend money on it. I see. At the hospital, they just said, okay, but when we got home, they yelled at me. What? I figured they didn't intend to let her get proper treatment, but yelling at her? What for? They grabbed me by the hair and said, "You had a good face, so I thought you'd eventually make us a lot of money. But now look what you've done." How ungrateful can you be? Ungrateful? These are the people who didn't even send her to high school. Then, they kicked me out with nothing. I wandered around and found the park where I met you, Keith. That park is known for having volunteer food distributions once a week. But it's still a park. Not the safest place for a young girl to sleep. This morning, I saw you drop your wallet, Keith, but I didn't have the strength to chase after you. The last time I had a proper meal was 3 days ago, at a volunteer food distribution. Hearing Iris's words, I felt like I was about to cry. That's why, when I checked the wallet, I saw your driver's license and thought you would come looking for it, so I held onto it. Iris. This girl is genuinely good-hearted. If anyone were in such a desperate situation and found a wallet, it wouldn't be surprising if they took the money. Even I had already resigned myself to the cash being gone. I'm glad that you're such a kind person, Keith. What? Because you reached out to someone like me, who was so filthy. The volunteers gave me food, but they looked disgusted when they got close to me. I must have smelled. Iris. But I believe there are kind people like you out there. I ended up like this because of my personality, always too scared to stand up to my parents. But meeting someone kind like you, who gave me a warm bath and a delicious meal, I feel incredibly happy right now. I will never forget this kindness for the rest of my life. Oh, come on. You don't need to treat a simple bath and meal like a lifelong debt. And besides, I told you this was just to thank you for finding my wallet, right? I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. Why does such a good person have to go through something so cruel? Iris, seeing my tears, gently wiped them with a tissue from nearby. I offered her my bed to sleep in. It wasn't freshly aired out, but she smiled happily, saying it had been a long time since she'd slept in a proper bed. Once I was sure she had fallen asleep, I lay down in the dining room. I kept in mind what I needed to do the next day. The following morning, I called my office to take the day off. Since I was usually diligent at work, they didn't question me too deeply about the reason. For breakfast, I served some simple toast and scrambled eggs. Then, I told Iris we would be going to the police together today, and she seemed a bit surprised. But she was still only 18, and she deserved protection. Her parents needed to be arrested as criminals and held accountable for their actions. I spoke with the police on her behalf. First, I explained that the wallet and driver's license I had reported missing had been found. Then, I shared everything Iris had gone through, the awful things her parents had done to her. When the female officer saw the burn on Iris's face and heard about how she was thrown out, even she couldn't hide her grimace. I understand. We'll take it from here. As for her parents, we'll handle it within a day or two. Thank you. I bowed to the police officer and left the rest in their hands. I wasn't Iris's parent or relative. I couldn't involve myself any further. Keith, thank you so much. Yeah, just leave the rest to the police, okay? Even though I said I worked part-time, I didn't know much. I should have asked the police for help sooner. I really am such a fool, aren't I? Iris laughed, but I gently hugged her. I'm sorry. It's probably uncomfortable being hugged by a guy who isn't your boyfriend or brother, right? But I want you to understand. There are people here who want you to be happy, and none of us think you're a fool. I'm really glad I met you, Iris. As I spoke, Iris showed tears for the first time since we met. I always wanted my dad and mom to hug me like this. Thank you, Keith. The officers around us looked on with kindness. 3 months later, I noticed a black car parked in front of my apartment, and a group of men in black suits got out and approached my door. When the doorbell rang, I answered, only to be left speechless by the sight of these men in black suits. Wait, did I do something wrong? As I stood there, too stunned to speak, the man who seemed to be the leader ordered the others around him. You all head back to the car. You're only going to alarm him. Only the man who seemed to be the leader remained, and he greeted me at the door. My name is Glenn. I am Iris's father. What? Iris's? Yes, the other day. What were you doing? Do you have any idea how much Iris suffered? You didn't even let her go to high school, made her work. Let her suffer burns on her face without giving her proper treatment, and then you threw her out. If you're a parent, your first priority should be to protect your child. You're supposed to be family. You're absolutely right. That's why I want to talk about this, so could I come in? Come in. Arguing at the doorway and getting kicked out of the apartment wouldn't help anyone. Besides, this man didn't seem like the drunken father Iris had described to me. I let the man, who claimed to be Iris's father, into the dining room and served him only tea. First, I apologize for the sudden visit. As I mentioned, my name is Glenn, and I am Iris's father. I'm Keith. Thank you for helping Iris. The truth is, I haven't been able to see her for a long time either. What? What do you mean? Iris was abducted when she was very young. I was stunned by what Glenn was saying. I run a certain company, he continued. It turned out to be a well-known corporation, even I had heard of it. Iris was the daughter of a major corporation, and Glenn, standing before me, was her biological father. Of course, even though she was taken, no ransom was demanded. We contacted the police, but they were unable to find the culprit. It has been 15 years since we lost Iris. I was beginning to give up. After 15 years of searching, anyone would imagine the worst. But then, 3 months ago, I got a call from the police. We may have found your daughter, they said. This must have been right after I left Iris with the police. Iris was only 3 years old at the time, so she didn't remember us and didn't even realize her real parents existed. We immediately conducted a DNA test to confirm our relationship. I see. The results confirmed that Iris is indeed my daughter. I brought her home, and now my wife and I are doing our best to make up for the time we lost. My wife is also overjoyed to have Iris back. Glenn's voice trembled with emotion, and tears welled up in his eyes. Seeing this, I could tell it wasn't an act, and knowing Iris was back with her real family, being loved, made me feel genuinely happy. As if it were my own happiness. I thought you might be concerned about what happened to Iris, so I wanted to let you know. Thank you. I'd love to hear more. First, she has regained her health. The burn on her face is being treated with the latest laser therapy, and the inflammation is subsiding. If we continue, it should completely disappear. That's great. I was worried since it's her face, after all. We can't thank you enough. And what happened to the people who were pretending to be her parents? I hadn't been told anything since I wasn't a family member. But Glenn, her real father, should know what happened to those who mistreated Iris. Those two were taken away by the police. As expected. They said they took Iris because they thought she might be worth money. But since demanding money from her real parents might expose their identity, they decided to have her work for them in the future. Their response was utterly self-centered. Why did they let her attend school up to middle school? It's true that education up to middle school is mandatory, and if they sent her to a public school, they might have managed. But it's not entirely free. Families must cover the cost of school materials, extracurricular activities, and field trips. Oh, well, it seems they had a child of the same age. However, they lost their child due to their own negligence. To cover it up, they sent Iris to school under their real daughter's name. They probably thought they could deceive the neighbors and those around them. I felt anger boiling up at Glenn's words. How horrible can people be? The guilt of causing Iris such sadness for their selfish reasons is heavy. Iris and Glenn are now consulting with lawyers to pursue the couple's punishment. Thanks to you, we were able to reunite with Iris. No, I have a small token of appreciation for you. I'd like you to accept this check for $33 million. I was taken aback. I had many questions, but first, why $33 million? I asked, puzzled by the oddly specific number. Iris's birthday is March 3rd. With a smile, Glenn offered the check, but I firmly refused to accept it. I can't take the check, but could I ask for a favor instead? My request was to see Iris again. Glenn immediately agreed, and we were reunited. A few years later, we decided to get married. The scars on Iris's face had faded away completely, and her once thin frame had become fuller and more womanly. Standing before me was a woman of stunning beauty. I've become a bit prettier, haven't I? Yes, but even if you had scars again, I would always love you. Of course, I'd never want anything like that to happen. So I promised to protect you no matter what. As I smiled, Iris hesitated for a moment and then leaned in close to whisper in my ear. Thinking it was a secret conversation, I leaned in to listen, and she whispered, "I'm glad I didn't take any money from your wallet back then." Honestly, I was torn. But I'm so glad I believed in my future. She then hugged me tightly. I gently hugged her back, holding her close. Let me tell you, this client is the biggest one we've got. You know what happens if we screw this up, right? Be ready, if you fail, I'll send you far away. We were supposed to have a big business meeting, but I got a sudden message that Mr. Yates, the president, couldn't make it. My boss, Harvey, was supposed to give the presentation in his place, but the moment he realized it was in English, he dumped the responsibility on Michelle, his subordinate. And he even hinted at a transfer if things went south. I'm not really good at English. Michelle, pale from the sudden turn of events, pleaded anxiously. "Ha? You're the one who came up with this project, right? So obviously, you're the one responsible. You better take full responsibility for this. When things get tough, He always pushes the burden onto his subordinates and cuts them loose. That's just the kind of guy he is. His blatant passing of the buck left me speechless. I've had enough of this. Don't worry. I'll handle it. I lightly patted her shoulder and stood by her side. Oh? And what could a useless guy like you possibly do? Harvey sneered as he grinned at me. Just watch. You won't be laughing for long. My name is Timothy. I work for a company that manages shopping malls. Technically, I'm in the sales department, but most of my work is just odd jobs. And not even at the office, out in the field. Can someone take this delivery up to the second floor storage? Passing through the back room, one of the mall's part-timers called out to the other staff. But everyone seemed too busy to help. I can do it. It was before my shift started, so I raised my hand to help. The part-timer looked at me, surprised. Oh, no, it's not your department. I feel bad. It's fine. Just leave this kind of stuff to him. Coincidentally, Harvey happened to be there, mocking me as usual. You're useless anyway, so the least you could do is contribute by doing the heavy lifting. Yes. With no room to argue, I loaded the boxes onto the cart and headed to the elevator. When I got back to the office, Harvey called me over. Hey, Timothy. Where the hell have you been? I've been looking for you. I was delivering some packages. You mean you've been doing that this whole time? How slow can you be? Sorry. The storage room was an absolute disaster. Things had been carelessly tossed everywhere, making a huge mess. I knew it was unnecessary, but I spent extra time organizing it. I decided not to explain, knowing he'd just call me inefficient, so I resigned myself to an apology. At least the part-timer appreciated it. Thanks as always, Timothy. But you should stand up for yourself sometimes. Harvey just takes advantage of your kindness and dumps all the trouble on you. Ha ha. All of us part-timers know you're the best worker here. We've got your back, so be confident. Thanks. She's right. All I have to do is say no. But if I refuse, I'll just get 10 or 100 times the snide remarks in return. Before I knew it, I'd become completely obedient to Harvey's demands. After I apologized, Harvey, seemingly satisfied, motioned for me to come over and introduced me to a woman. This is Michelle, who just transferred to our department today. You're not busy anyway, so show her around and be her mentor. That extra comment was unnecessary, but it wasn't a bad task, so I agreed. The woman standing in front of me was stunning, even in a plain office uniform, and she seemed very intelligent. I wondered if I was really up to the task of mentoring her, but Harvey smirked as he looked at Michelle. Good luck, you two incompetents. He said that and then returned to his desk. Incompetent. I thought that comment was directed at me, but what did he mean by you two incompetents? That mystery was solved during our introductions. I've been with the company for 5 years now, but this is my 4th department transfer. Wait, so you've been moved every year? Yes. According to her, she's been bounced around from one department to another because she couldn't perform well. What was originally a job at headquarters had finally led to her being transferred to this store. How can anyone grow in such an environment? I don't understand what the higher-ups are thinking. I really don't want to be called incompetent, but it's true I haven't been able to do my job well. It's not something you should just accept. The company hired you, so it's their responsibility to provide a proper environment for you to grow. If they can't do that, it's their fault, not yours. Of course, it's unlikely the higher-ups would ever admit that. And I couldn't say much either, not having seen her work firsthand. For now, I decided to give her a tour of the store and explain my department to help her get accustomed to the job. After watching Michelle for a few days, I started to realize that her lack of confidence might be the reason she's been looked down on or transferred. She has ambition, but somewhere inside, she's doubting herself, thinking, "Can I really do this?" That hesitation is making her ideas and opinions come across as half-hearted. It seems like she's unconsciously holding back her true potential. So there we were, once again sent out together to inspect the store's facilities. Checking the fire extinguishers, the elevators, and the escalators. We checked each one, marking them off on the checklist. "Timothy, this isn't really our job, is it?" Michelle voiced a reasonable question, and I could only respond with a wry smile. Technically, this task falls under the responsibility of the mall store staff. However, this shopping mall, located in a densely populated residential area, is packed with customers every day. The staff in charge of the site are so busy they're practically running in circles, so light tasks like this get passed on to people like me. Or rather, Harvey took on the task to make himself look good to the store staff, then passed it on to us. To keep Michelle's motivation from dropping, I decided to keep that part to myself. Yeah, it's true. But even though it's not our job, it's still important. Plus, look over there. I gestured toward a family of 3 walking hand in hand. They were smiling, discussing what they should have for lunch. Here, we can see the customers' faces directly. It makes me feel like what we do matters, and that's kind of a nice perk, don't you think? You're right. It's something we wouldn't see if we were stuck in the office. Michelle looked around. 2 women picking out clothes together, a couple playing in the arcade. Children with eyes sparkling in front of the toy store. I really want to work hard and help bring smiles to people's faces. Unlike when she was handed the checklist, her expression was now full of life. I wanted to help her channel that drive into confidence. And soon, the opportunity came. Michelle and I were selected to be part of a new project team. It was an enormous project, with potential sales of $100 million if successful. I was certain that if we succeeded, Michelle would finally gain the confidence she needed. The only concern I had was, listen up. Now that I'm involved, it's safe to say this project will succeed. But if any of you drag it down and it fails, I'll make sure you're all transferred out. Consider yourselves warned. The fact that Harvey was the leader of this project. Hearing something like that in the very first meeting was enough to make anyone shrink back. Does he not realize that threats won't motivate anyone? Timothy, do you think we'll be okay? He glared at us and said, especially you two, don't mess this up. Michelle, completely terrified, looked at me with eyes that were on the verge of tears. Don't worry. That's just Harvey trying to cover himself. If something goes wrong, he'll push the blame onto others. That still doesn't sound like we'll be okay. Well, we don't want his pressure to slow us down, so let's not take him too seriously. We'll just focus on doing our job. Okay. Her response lacked confidence, but I couldn't afford to let Harvey hinder her growth. So, I made sure to keep Harvey's involvement to a minimum as Michelle and I proceeded with our work. The project's concept was to simultaneously run events at all our stores nationwide. Each event would feature different shops from other locations, rotating between stores over a set period. We were responsible for planning, evaluating the stores to feature, negotiating deals, and outlining the project details. I wondered why such a massive project had been handed to our store sales department, but it made sense once I found out. Our store had the highest sales in the country, by far. Michelle, maybe they transferred you here so you could gain more hands-on experience, I suggested. But Michelle just looked downcast and said, so basically, I got demoted. She's the type who responds better to tangible actions than words. A half-hearted reassurance wouldn't reach her. Michelle, our job is to come up with the concept. How about we visit other shopping malls for research? Research? Yeah. The company will cover travel expenses, and we can check out both our competitors and other locations. I'm sure we'll come up with some great ideas. When are you free? I can drive us there. As I started listing nearby shopping malls, Michelle giggled. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, it just sounds like we're planning a date. Thinking about it, it did seem like that from an outside perspective. Oh, no. That's not what I meant. I know. But this is starting to sound fun. I'll look for some places too. Let's really dig into this. By the way, yeah, Timothy, your ideas always make so much sense. Your way of thinking and the way you explain things, it's amazing. I don't understand why your performance reviews are so low. Really? You're the only one who's ever said that, Michelle. I brushed off the compliment and steered the conversation back to work. From that point on, we spent our time fully engrossed in research. Even on our days off, I drove us to various shopping malls. We found that even stores under the same brand had unique features depending on the location, with some targeting specific customer demographics, while others offered a broader range of tenants. We gained a lot of valuable insights. Honestly, if it had been just me, I would have simply done what I was told, like always, and stuck to menial tasks. But this time, I was working for Michelle's sake. All I could think about was how to help her. For about a month, we alternated between research and compiling data, working together on the project proposal. I mostly handled the numbers and data analysis, while Michelle put together the actual proposal. It was during this process that I realized her true talent. Michelle, this project proposal. Is there something unclear? Or maybe the layout is off. No, it's incredibly clear. I can't believe you put this together all by yourself. Michelle's proposal was truly easy to understand. It perfectly outlined the research we conducted, the thought process behind our ideas, and how they were incorporated into the plan. It detailed the differences between the malls, highlighting each location's strengths, what was missing, and what customers were seeking. The materials were minimal, concise, and captivating. I had never seen such a high-quality proposal before. Did someone in your previous department teach you this? No, I never had the chance to create proposals before. So I put all my effort into it. Her presentation was logical, clearly based on what she had seen and experienced firsthand, making the proposal grounded in strong evidence. Michelle must have a high level of sensitivity. That's why she shrinks under criticism, yet is also able to consider others' feelings. It's truly amazing. I don't think it needs any revisions. If you say that, Timothy, it makes me really happy. We finalized the proposal and presented it to the team. We highlighted that the event space at this shopping mall was larger than other locations. We also noted the unexpected number of people resting on the benches. Our specific idea was to hold simple performances in the event space, with different stores rotating each week. We'd set up plenty of chairs so people could watch the shows while taking a break. We plan to invite comedians, musicians, and other performers to rotate between the stores nationwide. For the performers, it would feel like a national tour. The investment would be significant, but the potential revenue was promising. We had observed customer behavior, identified their needs, and compiled a list of performers we wanted to contact. Most of these ideas came from Michelle, and her creativity and keen observation continually surprised me. She had simply never been given the chance to show her talents before. Her proposal was well received, and it was selected to be presented to Mr. Yates, the company president. The next day, Michelle, Harvey, and I were called to Mr. Yates's office at headquarters. At the sales meeting, they decided to move forward with your proposal. Thank you for the excellent work. We'll work out the details and negotiations. But I wanted to update you first. Michelle and I were speechless, hardly believing that results came so quickly. But before we could say anything, Harvey stepped forward. Thank you for your praise. We had many discussions about the direction of the proposal, and it paid off. What a lie! Harvey hadn't paid any attention to our proposal and had kept piling menial tasks on us. The only reason he put Michelle and me on this project was to have us handle extra work when things got busy. He even said so himself, accompanied by his usual snide remarks. But I couldn't ruin the mood by calling him out, so I just stood there, watching Harvey and Mr. Yates chat in high spirits. Michelle's project continued to progress smoothly, and today, we were scheduled to meet with a potential partner, a game company from overseas. They were the creators of a game series hugely popular in Japan, and we planned to have one of the developers host a talk show as part of the event. The online meeting was primarily supposed to be led by Mr. Yates, who would handle the main explanation. We were also participating from the store's office as backup, ready to provide additional details if necessary. Even if the deal didn't go through, a positive response or interest would be considered a win. 10 minutes before the meeting, as we were preparing to join the conference room, Harvey's phone rang. Yes, this is Harvey. What? No, you must be joking, right? Harvey's face grew paler by the second. No way. I understand, we'll handle it. Yes. When he hung up, his expression was grim. I asked who had called, and he said it was Mr. Yates's secretary. Apparently, Mr. Yates suddenly collapsed. At that moment, Michelle, her face even paler than Harvey's, stood up. What? Is he okay? Her hands were trembling, and she seemed genuinely frightened. Of course it's not okay. Mr. Yates was supposed to handle everything. No, I mean, what about Mr. Yates's condition? It was the first time I'd heard Michelle raise her voice like that. Perhaps surprised by her intensity, Harvey responded honestly. Oh, they said his life isn't in danger. Apparently, he was on a business trip earlier, and with this heat, he got heat stroke. He's conscious, but he can't sit up yet. Thank goodness. Michelle let out a sigh of relief as she sat down, but now it was Harvey who stood up. Good. This is far from good. The secretary said to handle it ourselves. What are we going to do? We had all the materials at hand. We didn't have the exact script, but since our team developed the project, any one of us could explain it. Naturally, that role should fall to the leader, Harvey. Damn it. Harvey, visibly irritated, reluctantly entered the conference room. Well, he is the leader, so he should be able to handle it. He's been to countless sales meetings and negotiations with other clients, so it should be fine. We joined the meeting, trying to remain calm. However, hello? Michael, our negotiation partner, greeted us cheerfully, but Harvey's face went completely pale. Maybe he forgot the client was a foreigner. After all, every other client until now had been domestic. "Hello?" Harvey awkwardly responded with a strained smile, then muted his microphone. "Michelle, it's your project, so you're going to explain it." "Got it?" "What?" Michelle's eyes widened in shock, as did everyone else's. "With Mr. Yates out, it's up to you, the project creator, to handle this. And just so you know, this is our biggest client. You understand what happens if you mess this up, right?" His blatant attempt to shove responsibility onto her left me speechless. Now that I think about it, I remember hearing that Harvey wasn't good at English. But even so, dumping this on Michelle out of nowhere was absurd. Before Michelle could protest, Harvey clumsily explained in broken English that Mr. Yates was unavailable and that Michelle would present the project in his place. Then turned off his camera. I glanced over at Michelle. She had managed to give a quick greeting and display the materials on the screen. But she hadn't been expected to handle the negotiations herself, so there was no way she could have been prepared for this. Still, she tried her best, glancing between the screen and the documents, clearly struggling to find the right words. Meanwhile, Harvey sat back, smirking at her discomfort. I'd had enough. I was done with Harvey, done with this situation, and done with avoiding responsibility myself. "Michelle, it's okay. I'll handle this." I gently patted her shoulder and turned my camera on. "Apologies for the interruption. Michelle, the project lead, is feeling under the weather and has a sore throat, so Timothy, one of the co-creators, will take over the explanation." I mixed in a little lie to shift the attention to me. Everyone in the meeting room widened their eyes in surprise. Explaining this much in English was no big deal. As we've mentioned, we plan to host long-term events utilizing our event space. With your company's support, I wove together the key points from previous negotiations with the passion we had when we first conceptualized the project. It wasn't difficult, just translating everything into English. But for Harvey, who struggled with English, he probably had no idea what I was saying. He stared at me with a dumbfounded expression. Michelle, on the other hand, quickly and efficiently provided the necessary documents next to me, ensuring the presentation flowed smoothly. Even though it was all last minute, we managed to pull it off, thanks to her. The client's representative was American, but their PR representative was from Spain. He spoke fluent English, of course, but to ensure our message was perfectly understood, I addressed him in Spanish while continuing the main presentation in English. Their accountant was German, so I explained the financial details in German, then summarized everything in English for the rest of the team. I kept switching between languages. You're fluent in many languages. It's very clear and easy to follow, he said. Thank you. If anyone has trouble understanding the nuances, please let me know. I'm happy to speak in whichever language is most comfortable. Several people took me up on the offer, requesting explanations in Chinese, French, and so on. For me, it was exciting that they were showing interest in our project, and it felt like an opportunity. I eagerly fulfilled each request. I was determined not to let Michelle's hard work go to waste. That was my only focus. After I finished the explanation, I muted my microphone for the moment. It seemed the other side was going to discuss things among their team. Timothy, thank you so much. Michelle bowed her head to me. No, Michelle, you've worked so hard up to this point. I had to do my part. You can speak English? Harvey asked, tilting his head in confusion. He only mentioned English. Had he not realized I had been speaking other languages too? Yes, well, I attended university abroad. Abroad? Where exactly? Cambridge. Yes, I had studied at the University of Cambridge, specifically in a language course. I learned not just English but various languages, including those not widely used anymore, along with their historical and cultural contexts. But that very fact became a burden for me later. Once people knew I had attended such a prestigious university, they began to put pressure on me. You're from Cambridge, so you can handle this, right? Cambridge isn't all it's cracked up to be, huh? Before I knew it, my evaluations became dominated by the university name rather than my actual performance. Eventually, I started feeling constant pressure in everything I did. What if I failed? Would people say, even someone from Cambridge can't do this? At some point, I stopped mentioning Cambridge altogether. I realized that if people thought I was just an average or even below average worker, no one would expect too much from me. I concluded that hiding my background was the best way to avoid excessive expectations. I was running away from myself, afraid of disappointing others. But now, that very knowledge was helping Michelle and the company. Harvey, with his incredulous voice, clearly hadn't known about my academic background. Cambridge. I had no idea. You, of all people. You're lying. And yet, it was that incompetent person who just saved your presentation, wasn't it? I found myself finally able to speak my mind to Harvey. In the past, I would have bitten my tongue, out of deference to him as my boss. But seeing how he pushed his responsibilities onto his subordinates, I had lost all respect for him. What did you just say? Sorry to keep you waiting. Harvey's face grew tense, and he looked like he was about to say something. But Michael's voice coming through the computer stopped him in his tracks. Timothy, your explanation was excellent. The schedule and costs are all very reasonable. Plus, we'd love to meet the Japanese fans of our game. I'd like to move forward with this. Thank you so much. So, should we continue the discussion with you? Are you the head of sales? Oh, no. I'd prefer if Mr. Yates or the appropriate department head could take over. I'm just a regular employee and don't have the authority. What? You're just an employee? You've got to be kidding. It seemed he was genuinely surprised, not just flattering me. Then why were you the one presenting? Where's your leader? I glanced at Harvey. He still seemed lost, unable to follow the conversation. That man you saw earlier, Harvey, is our leader. He can't speak English. So he tried to shift the responsibility onto his subordinates to avoid blame. Realizing he had been mentioned by name, Harvey straightened up, sensing that the conversation had turned to him. He's someone who shifts his failures onto his subordinates and takes credit only for the good parts. I couldn't stand to watch it anymore, so, despite being just a regular employee, I took it upon myself to explain things to you all. Even after hearing my saying, Harvey continued to laugh nervously, clearly unaware of what was being said about him. He didn't seem to realize the gravity of the situation at all. Is this the kind of person involved in the project? That's a problem. Let's make removing him from the project a condition for moving forward with this deal. A few of our employees who understood English chuckled softly at this suggestion. As usual, Harvey had no idea what was going on. I understand. I'll relay this to management. Would it be all right if we give you a response at a later date? Of course. By the way, it's rare to find someone like you who can communicate with so many people. This might not be the best place to bring it up. But how would you like to work for our company? We could meet your salary expectations. Wait, what? Oh, I'm serious. It's not just a lip service. If you're interested, we'd love to have you on board. It was a generous offer, but I wasn't mentally prepared for something like this. I needed some time to think it over. Thank you very much. I'll need a little time to consider it. After that exchange, the meeting finally came to an end. Timothy, what happened during that call? And what about your disrespectful attitude earlier? Excuse me, but may I go check on Mr. Yates at the hospital? Michelle cut Harvey off and began gathering her things, clearly getting ready to leave. Even if her request was denied, it looked like she was ready to bolt out of the meeting room at any moment. It was clear that she was deeply concerned about Mr. Yates. Michelle, I'll drive you. Harvey, our client is interested in moving forward, and will report the details in the minutes. Ignoring whatever Harvey was muttering, we quickly left the meeting room. For some reason, Michelle already knew the location of the hospital and even which room Mr. Yates was in. As we hurried down the hospital hallway, I heard a familiar voice coming from our destination. It was Harvey. Had he really taken a taxi or something to get here ahead of us? And so, the negotiations are going well. The only unfortunate thing is, when I try to explain in place of Mr. Yates, my subordinate, Timothy, overstepped and took over the presentation without permission. I couldn't believe my ears. Shaking my head in disbelief at how easily he could tell such blatant lies, I walked into the room, feeling utterly exasperated. Excuse me. Oh, you both came. Sorry for putting you through all this trouble. It's no trouble at all. More importantly, how are you feeling? I'm feeling much better. The IV is done, and, well, they've put me in a rather over-the-top room. But I should be discharged by tomorrow. So there's no need to worry. That's a relief. Michelle collapsed into a nearby chair, her body going limp. It seemed the relief had completely drained her strength. By the way, Harvey was just telling me about the negotiations. Harvey gave us a smug look, confident that we wouldn't dare contradict him. He must have thought his version of events would be believed. How much of it was a lie? The piercing question made the room fall silent. Harvey turned to Mr. Yates with a look of fear on his face. Mr. Yates? What do you mean by lie? I just can't picture you as the type to act so decisively in that situation. What do you think, Michelle? Mr. Yates shifted his gaze to Michelle, who was still seated. Michelle stood up and walked over to stand beside Harvey. It's true that the negotiations were mostly successful. However, all of the explaining was done by Timothy. The entire meeting was recorded. So you can review it if you'd like. Michelle, what are you saying? Harvey, is what she said true? Given what I've heard about your behavior, it's not exactly hard to believe. What do you mean by my behavior? Your behavior and attitude were being reported to me daily, said Mr. Yates. Harvey, still oblivious, didn't seem to grasp the meaning of the words. Meanwhile, I realized something. Mr. Yates, could it be? My words seemed to make Harvey realize what was happening. He muttered, "No way." Under his breath. My daughter has been telling me about the things you said. It seems you've been quite harsh with her. Daughter? You mean? Yes, Michelle is my daughter. I know she's a bit shy and inexperienced, which made me worry about her future as a professional. I allowed her to be transferred to various departments, thinking it would help her gain experience. But I never expected she'd have a boss who would call her useless and dump all the menial tasks on her. I was planning to take action soon, but now's the perfect time. I think a demotion is in order for you. Wait, please. This has to be a mistake. A mistake? Hardly. I even had Michelle carry a voice recorder. I'm fully aware of your behavior. Consider yourself lucky I'm not announcing your demotion in front of everyone. Damn it! You set me up. Harvey shouted angrily, his fists clenched, but his outburst drew the attention of nurses and security guards. With no options left, Harvey stormed out of the room, practically running away. Timothy, thank you so much for everything. And not just this time, thank you for giving Michelle the opportunity to grow. Before she started working with you, she had no confidence in herself. But whenever she talks about working with you, she seems so happy. Dad, stop it. Michelle, embarrassed by her father's praise, protested. It was clear they were just a close, loving family. I watched the two of them with a smile. On the way home from the hospital, Michelle bowed apologetically. I'm sorry for not telling you about my father. You don't need to apologize. I had my own secret, too. I wondered if Michelle had kept her connection to Mr. Yates hidden for the same reason I had kept my background a secret. Did you hide it because of the pressure? Yes. I thought if people knew I was Mr. Yates's daughter, they'd have high expectations of me. And when I realized I wasn't capable of living up to those expectations, I lost confidence in myself. So that's why you started doubting yourself. Yes. No matter how hard I tried, if I didn't see results, I'd feel disappointed in myself. I kept thinking that as Mr. Yates's daughter, failure wasn't an option. I understand. I went through the same thing. But Michelle, you're incredibly talented, so there's no need to feel that pressure anymore. Thank you, Timothy. It's all thanks to you, Michelle hesitated, as if struggling to find the right words. About that headhunting offer earlier, what are you going to do? Oh. Well, I'm not opposed to working overseas, but I'll need to give it some serious thought. No, never mind. If there's something you want to say, don't hold back. I'd really like to keep working with you, Timothy. But it's your life, so please don't feel pressured by me. Thank you. It means a lot to me that you said that. To be honest, I'd never really felt needed by anyone before. So hearing that from Michelle was truly touching. You're right. I need to carefully think about what's best for my life. By the way, if you're not satisfied with your current position or salary, I have an idea. An idea? A few days later, we received official confirmation that the deal had been successfully closed. And, of course, it came with the news of Harvey's dismissal. It turned out that Harvey's numerous verbal abuses and failures to fulfill his duties as a supervisor had come to light. And instead of a simple demotion, he was reassigned to a low-ranking position at the store with the worst sales, tasked with menial work. I hope that by experiencing the tasks we used to do, he'll gain some empathy for others. I also heard that he's now required to attend regular English training sessions. Having language skills is always beneficial, so I hope he makes the most of it. As for me, I was promoted to project leader, taking over Harvey's role. It turned out that Michelle's good idea had been this all along. None of the team members had any objections to my explanation. On the contrary, they praised my actions and regretted how they had treated me before. The same went for Michelle. Everyone admired how she supported me so effectively while the others were at a loss for what to do. Now, I'm the project leader, and Michelle serves as my second in command. I turned down the headhunting offer, but we maintained a good relationship with them, and the work continues smoothly. Michelle also decided to reveal that she is Mr. Yates's daughter. At the same time, she expressed her desire not to receive any special treatment and her determination to handle the pressure on her own. Before we knew it, people started teasing us, saying we made a great couple. We often get playful remarks when we're together. Well, since we are actually a couple, it doesn't bother me much, but it's a bit embarrassing, especially before meetings. Having gone through similar struggles, Michelle and I developed a strong bond as we faced challenges together. I'm truly grateful to Michelle for being my partner both in work and in life. Mr. Yates occasionally visits the store, and his usual line is, "Michelle's been talking about you all the time lately," which never fails to make Michelle upset. It's become our little tradition. Being with Michelle has made me realize how important it is to have an environment where you can use your abilities without worrying about how others perceive you. Sure, high expectations can be intimidating, but it's a shame not to use the skills you've worked hard to gain. Besides, I've learned that the more you use your abilities, the more you grow. If fear holds you back, the best way to overcome it is to use your strengths and sharpen your skills. I always tell the people I work with that I want to help build a workplace where everyone can be themselves. At my daughter's university's homecoming, our family found ourselves in a crisis. Apparently, the outfit for the homecoming queen contest hadn't arrived. I was so looking forward to competing. My daughter sobbed in anguish. She had been learning various techniques from her mother, a former model, and had been practicing tirelessly for this day. For a girl aspiring to be a model, today was a crucial event, a make-or-break moment in her life. It's too soon to give up. I'll figure something out. Figure something out? What can you even do, Dad? It's no wonder she said that. After all, I'm just a janitor. As a janitor, there's nothing I can do to help my daughter. Yes, as a mere janitor. I bolted out of the dressing room. I had no idea at the time that this action would drastically change the course of my life. My name is Casey. I'm a janitor at a private university. I live an ordinary life with my wife, Aria, and our daughter, Mila. If there's one peculiar thing about us, it's that Mila attends the same university where I work. Mila knew about my job, but she had no idea her chosen university was where I worked. I remember clearly how hard it was to break the news to her after she showed me her acceptance letter. Naturally, Mila's reaction was not a good one. Of course, it would be awkward to attend the school where your own parent works. Especially when that parent isn't a faculty or staff member, but a janitor. I can't believe Dad is the janitor at my school. It's so embarrassing. I'll have to pretend I don't know him if we pass each other. I overheard her say this to her mother from the next room. Aria said, "Your father works hard for our family, so don't say things like that." You should be grateful, but Mila's response was lukewarm at best. Well, there's no way she could proudly tell anyone that her father, in his dirty janitor's uniform, walking around campus, was someone to boast about. So, I didn't say anything to her. Mila has always looked up to her mother, Aria. Even now, over 40, Aria is beautiful. Her figure, hair, skin, and demeanor are all youthful. She's not trying to look young, rather, her beauty is natural for her age. This isn't just my biased opinion, it's a result of her habit of maintaining her looks as a former model. Since she was a student, Aria used her height and well-defined features to become a charismatic model. She graced the covers of countless fashion magazines and was in high demand for commercials and events. Now retired and working as an office worker, her colleagues still say she has an aura that sets her apart. Mila has admired Aria since she was a child. She learned everything from exercise and diet to beauty tips, and now she's a model, chosen from readers herself. Being a model means avoiding negative scandals at all costs. I understand that if it were known that her father is a janitor, it could harm Mila's image. So I've made every effort to stay out of her sight at work. My existence might ruin Mila's future. Both Mila and I know this all too well. Ah, Mom is so pretty and such a cool office lady even now. But Dad's a janitor, and I can't tell my friends. It's so awkward when they ask what my dad does, she complained again to Aria when I wasn't around. Fresh out of the bath, I overheard this conversation from the hallway. Mila had her back to the hallway, so she didn't notice me, but Aria did, and our eyes met perfectly. Aria gave me an apologetic look, then gently patted Mila's head. Don't say things like that, okay? My job might be your dream, but every job is important. Yeah. I guess. Mila replied, not fully convinced. I turned my back on them and headed to the bedroom. I often hear on TV and the internet that daughters and their fathers don't get along well. I'm in the same situation as most fathers. Telling myself that everyone probably feels this way was the only way to distract myself from this loneliness and emptiness. Even though she says things like that, I love my one and only daughter. One day, I noticed a bunch of posters plastered all over the university's main building bulletin board. Normally, I wouldn't pay any attention to the board, but this time, my eyes were drawn to it, because Mila's face was on one of the posters. At the top of the poster, it announced the Homecoming Queen event in bold letters, along with the date. Apparently, it's being held on the final day of homecoming. Mila is going to be queen. She's my daughter, but no, being Aria's daughter, it's only natural for her to participate in such an event. Mila's goal is to become a model like her mother. I was glad to see her getting closer to her dream, and I finished my work that day with a cheerful heart. When I told Aria about it after coming home, she was overjoyed as if it were her own success. It seems that if someone has an invitation from a participant, they can get priority seating close to the stage. Watching Aria happily chattering about wanting to go, I felt a warm, comforting feeling. Just then, Mila came home. Welcome home, Mila. I heard you're competing for homecoming queen. How did you? Oh. Seeing me, Mila let out a sigh. Then she added, just don't come to watch, okay? It's not that it doesn't hurt. If, for some reason, I can't get the day off and end up peeking in wearing my janitor's uniform, and if it ever got out that I was her father, Mila's reputation would surely suffer. I know that's what she's trying to say, and I can't say I don't understand her feelings. Yeah, it's next month. If I win the grand prize, the designer Alec will create a special outfit tailored just for me. Alec. Yeah. Mom, you know him, right? Have you ever worked with him before? Alec is a famous designer from our generation. He incorporates youth trends into his practical yet sophisticated designs, which are popular with a wide range of people. Well, yes, kind of. Wow. That's amazing, Mom. Aria and I exchanged glances. Aria's face looked complicated. I'm sure I wore the same expression. And you know what? They said I'll be featured in one of Alec's magazines. The event staff worked really hard to make that happen. Really, that's amazing. He's even coming to watch on the day of the event. If I win the grand prize and get discovered by Alec, it might not be just a dream to make it big internationally. She continued with excitement. It seems she's quite enamored with Alec. All the homecoming queen outfits are designed by Alec. The auditorium is going to have a runway, and we'll be walking down it. That sounds exciting. Mila was too caught up in her excitement to notice Aria's somber expression and tone. Then, leaning forward, she hugged Aria tightly. "Mom, teach me how to walk and pose. I really want to do my best." "Sure. I will." Despite Aria's reluctant tone, Mila was bursting with enthusiasm. Late at night, when Mila had likely fallen asleep, Aria and I sat across from each other in silence, both wearing troubled expressions. Should we tell Mila the truth? Aria lowered her head, looking as if she didn't know what to do. That's all in the past now, and it's fine. At least, it is for me. If you're okay with it. Still, I didn't know Mila admired Alec so much. I didn't either. Has he become that famous? Aria clenched her fists as if trying to endure something. I gently opened her clenched hand to prevent her from hurting herself. What's done is done. All we can do now is support Mila. The day of the homecoming queen event arrived quickly. I was already on campus for work, and Aria had been invited by Mila. Pulled along by Aria, I made my way to the auditorium. Is it really okay for me to go? Of course it is. Besides, they won't be able to see us from the stage. To be honest, I couldn't sit still anyway. So, in a way, I was grateful for Aria's insistence. She sat me down in the audience and said she was going to see Mila for a bit. I watched her head out to the lobby and glanced at my watch. My work would start after homecoming, once the attendees had left. Right now, I was just in a regular t-shirt, not my janitor's uniform. So even if Mila spotted me, at worst, she'd just be mad, or so I hoped. I'd seen Mila in magazines, but this would be the first time I'd see her in action. Mila had inherited Aria's looks and never flaunted it. Well, she might be harsh on me, but as long as she's doing well out there, that's all that matters. As the event start time drew closer, my heart pounded with anticipation. Just as I was wondering where Aria was, my phone buzzed with a call from her. I got up and stepped into the lobby to answer it, and her panicked voice came through. "Hello? It's a disaster. Mila's outfit is missing." "Missing? What do you mean?" "Just come to the dressing room." I sprinted to the designated location. I flashed my janitor's ID to get through the restricted area without any trouble. When I entered the room, Mila was in tears, and Aria was talking with a student in a homecoming staff t-shirt. What happened? Mila's outfit didn't arrive. Apparently, a few days ago, they had done a fitting, but there were some issues with the outfit. So it was sent back for adjustments and was supposed to be delivered again. However, the outfit that was supposed to arrive this morning was nowhere to be found, and they couldn't even get a response from the supplier. Possibly because they were closed. I was so looking forward to competing. I practiced so hard. Aria pulled Mila into a comforting embrace as she cried out in anguish. "So that's why you called me." I glanced at Aria, who nodded firmly. "Yes, please." "For Mila." "Got it. I'll figure something out." I asked the student staff how much time we had until Mila's turn. "About an hour," they said. I requested that Mila be the last contestant to buy as much time as possible, then dashed out of the dressing room. My destination, the FCS warehouse. There, leftover fabric from classes and homecoming preparations was packed into cardboard boxes. After homecoming, it was my job to dispose of all of this. I called Miss Tanner, the FCS professor. "Miss Tanner, sorry to bother you." "Oh, Casey? What's the matter?" "Well, I'd like to use some of the FCS disposal materials." "The disposal materials? From the warehouse?" "Yes, and also a sewing machine." "Actually, go ahead, you can tell me the reason later." Her cheerful voice came through the phone. "I'm curious why you'd want those things." "I expect great things, Casey." "Show me later, I'll be looking forward to it." "Thank you." I quickly flashed my ID to get into the storage room, grabbed what I needed, and headed to the sewing room. Calling Aria and Mila to join me, I asked Aria for Mila's measurements. "Dad, what are you doing?" Mila's eyes widened as she watched me. With no time to spare, I simply said, "Making something you might like," then focused on my task. A message from the event staff came through. "Mila, it's almost time, please get ready." Mila changed into the outfit just in time. Mila sees herself and is at a loss for words. She looked at me in the mirror and opened and closed her mouth. "Dad, this is." Aria took her by the arm and led her toward the stage. "Come on, let's go. Let's show everyone how amazing you look." "Go on, Cinderella," I said. It felt cheesy, even to me, but Mila gave a shy smile. I nodded to Aria, asking her to take care of Mila, and made my way to the audience. Mila's name was announced, and she stepped onto the stage. The moment she appeared, the whole auditorium gasped. Unlike the glamorous, feminine outfits worn by previous contestants, Mila's dress was a patchwork of various fabrics. It looked like a clown's dress, a riot of colors and textures. "Is that Alec's design?" It seems a bit unusual, even for him. I could hear murmurs of confusion from the crowd. But I wasn't worried at all. Because it was Mila who was wearing it. It's so colorful and cute. Such a bold outfit, but it looks amazing on her. Wow, I wish I could wear something like that. The more they looked, the more positive comments spread through the crowd. Some girls, who seemed to be Mila's friends, were waving enthusiastically. Basking in the cheers, Mila walked the runway confidently. She executed the moves Aria had taught her perfectly. My teachings and your creation. I never imagined I'd see her like this. Aria said dreamily, appearing next to me without me noticing. She thanked me, and I simply nodded in response. When Mila reached the end of the runway, a staff member approached her with a microphone for an interview. "Great job. It's quite an eye-catching outfit, and it suits you well. Can you tell us the highlight of this outfit?" "Thank you. This outfit was made by my father. He made it with so much love just for me, and that's the biggest highlight." The crowd buzzed again. I was stunned. I never expected her to say that about me. "Your father?" "Yes." Mila seemed to struggle to say more, hesitating for a moment. But then, she steeled herself and continued. "Originally, I was supposed to wear one of Alec's designs, just like everyone else. But due to some mix-up, my outfit didn't arrive. And I thought I'd have to withdraw. Then, my dad made this beautiful dress for me." She twirled the skirt, letting it flutter. I had told my dad not to come to the stage until the last moment. I said some really terrible things to him. But when I was in trouble, he helped me without hesitation. Because of him, I was able to stand on this amazing stage. I'll never forget today. Dad, I'm sorry for all the awful things I've said. I can feel how much you care about me through this outfit. Her speech turned into sobs midway through. Mila was crying. This dress is my treasure. I'm so grateful. I could hear her sniffling softly. In front of us, the girls were dabbing at their eyes with handkerchiefs. Mila, is your father here in the audience? I think he is. Then, would you like to express your gratitude to him directly? When the MC called out, Mila's father, my heart nearly skipped a beat. The audience began to look around, trying to spot Mila's father. Should I go up there? You're being called. I felt a gentle tap on my back. Aria. Yeah, you're right. Mila was waiting for me. I couldn't just stay in my seat. Taking a deep breath, I walked toward the stage. A staff member guided me up onto the platform. Dad. Mila, you did great. I. As tears welled up, Mila threw herself into my arms. In that instant, the entire venue erupted into applause. Amidst the cheers, Mila whispered softly, "Thank you. What a beautiful family." Let's give Mila and her father another big round of applause. As the host spoke, the crowd's energy reached its peak. In disbelief, I waved to the audience alongside Mila as we made our way off the stage. Back in the dressing room, as I wiped the sweat from my forehead, Mila suddenly said, "Oh, we should take a picture." She held up her phone in front of the dressing room. Mila wanted a photo with me. I was overwhelmed. Mila's eyes were still red, but she had a bright smile on her face. Just after the camera captured our image, I heard a voice I never wanted to hear again. "Casey, it's been a while." "Huh?" I looked away from the phone to see Alec standing right in front of us. Alec?" Mila gasped, freezing up completely. Right, I remembered. Mila admired Alec. "Nice to meet you, I'm Casey's daughter, right? I saw that awful outfit you wore." "What?" Mila looked confused, not understanding what he meant, and Alec let out a mocking laugh. "Ha ha. Like father, like daughter, they say." Stepping on stage in such a tacky, sheep-looking outfit, what were you thinking? What are you? Mila stood there in stunned silence, unable to process that her idol was belittling her. I stepped in front of Mila and glared at Alec. "If you want to mock someone, mock me, not her." "Mock you, huh? So, what are you doing for work these days?" "I'm a janitor at this university." I didn't feel any shame in saying it anymore. Mila had accepted me for who I was, so I could proudly tell anyone about my job. A janitor? You must be kidding. You've really hit rock bottom, haven't you? Alec doubled over in laughter. He's not a failure. Mila started to defend me, but before she could finish, Alec gave her a once-over and scoffed. Who would vote for someone who looks good in rags like that? Not me, that's for sure. I wouldn't want someone like you wearing any of my designs. Enough. Mila jumped at the sound of my raised voice. I rarely yelled, especially not in front of her. I felt bad for scaring her, but I couldn't just stand by and let Alec belittle her. If you have a problem, it's with me. You can say whatever you want about me, and I don't care about the past anymore. But I will never forgive anyone who insults my daughter. Look at you, all fired up. Clumsy, naive. No wonder the industry shut you out. Shut out of the industry? What do you mean? Mila repeated Alec's words in a whisper, trying to make sense of them. Alec laughed at her confusion. You really don't know anything, do you? Some daughter you are. I didn't do anything wrong. The problem was that you didn't have people you could trust around you. You surrounded yourself with people who could easily betray you. That's why when I stole your designs, you could only cry about it. Pathetic. Quite bold words from someone who climbed to the top by stealing, a voice interrupted. It was Arya, stepping forward. She must have come to the dressing room to check on us. Mom! You did amazing, Mila. It was such a beautiful performance, Arya said with a soft smile before turning to glare coldly at Alec. It's been a long time. Do you have some business with my husband and daughter? No, not at all. You're as stunning as ever. The moment Alec saw Arya, he turned his back on us. If you had chosen me, you'd be living a winner's life by now. With those empty words, he walked away. As the storm finally passed, Mila turned to me with an anxious look as soon as we entered the dressing room. Was what he said true? That Alec copied your designs. Well, and Dad, I never knew you could make clothes like this. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't either of you tell me? I realized I couldn't hide it anymore, so I explained everything from the past to Mila. I used to be a fashion designer. I was relatively well known back then, incorporating youth trends into practical yet refined designs, the same style Alec is famous for now. That's how I met Arya, who was a model at the time. Our first encounter was when I designed outfits for one of her fashion shows. We quickly grew closer through our shared passion for work and our hobbies. But Alec, another designer, didn't take kindly to our relationship. At that time, his designs weren't widely accepted, and he was struggling in the industry. He had feelings for Arya and was clearly resentful of my presence in her life. He picked fights with me on several occasions, but I thought it was up to Arya to decide whom she wanted to be with, so I avoided getting involved. Alec's jealousy of my growing popularity as a designer and my close relationship with Arya eventually led him to take drastic measures. I had entered a design contest for a major fashion magazine. Shortly afterward, I received a call from the editor. They suspected me of stealing someone else's designs. I was familiar with the people at the magazine and decided to go in person to discuss it. There, I was shown designs that looked very similar to mine, which had been submitted earlier. And those designs were Alec's. I insisted that the designs were my original work, but soon after, another client accused me of plagiarizing Alec's past designs. Apparently, similar designs were appearing elsewhere. I knew better than anyone that I hadn't done such a thing. However, trust is fragile. When they found Alec's rough sketches in my workspace, that was the final nail in the coffin. With that evidence, no matter what I said, it was futile. Alec didn't take legal action against me, but he made sure I was blacklisted by publishers and event companies. And so, I lost my job. Seeing what was happening, Arya quietly started probing her contacts, fellow models and designers. Eventually, we found out that Alec had orchestrated everything behind the scenes. Every person who claimed I had plagiarized had been bribed by Alec. And the rough sketches of his found on my desk had been planted there by a junior colleague acting on his orders. With these testimonies, Arya said we could take revenge on Alec. But the thought of how easily people could be bought with money terrified me. Even if I made a comeback, there was no guarantee the same thing wouldn't happen again. The people I thought were close to me had betrayed me so effortlessly. I lost faith in everything, and despite Aria trying to stop me, I decided to quit being a designer. Meanwhile, all my previous works were credited to Alec, and he quickly rose to fame. I realized this line of work wasn't meant for me. You need the resolve to push others down and be pushed down yourself. Of course, Aria, who knew the truth, never wavered toward Alec. She told me she wanted to stay by my side, even if I had nothing. By that time, I had grown to love Aria as well, but I couldn't burden her with my jobless state. I started looking for a new job, and that's when Ms. Tanner, a professor at the FCS department of the university where I now work, reached out to me. This university is also my alma mater. Ms. Tanner had always looked out for me since my student days and believed the plagiarism incident was a misunderstanding. She was one of the few people who knew both my designs and my character. She offered me a job at the university. There was even a teaching position available, and she assured me I'd be more than welcome. However, I no longer wanted to be involved in the design world, so I politely declined. That's how I ended up restarting my career as a janitor, the only other position available at the time. After finishing my story, I looked at Mila with a bit of trepidation. She was crying. I didn't know anything. I said such awful things to you. It's not your fault, Mila. I'm sorry for keeping it from you all this time. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to dig up the past, and I didn't want to say anything that might crush your dream of becoming a model. I'm sorry too, Mila, Aria added, apologizing with me. Mila shook her head and stood up. Neither of you did anything wrong. Thank you. It's enough that you understand now, Mila. As for Alec, whatever happens to him now is no concern of mine. Even if you two forgive him, I don't want to let this end here. I want more people to see your designs, Dad. Watch me, I'll make things right for you. I have an idea, Mila said, so despite my concern for her, Aria and I went back to the audience seating. The grand prize announcement was about to begin. One by one, the participants were called onto the stage, Mila among them, standing tall and proud. Watching her stand there confidently made my heart swell with pride. First, the judges, professors from the FCS department, student representatives, and Alec gave their brief comments. And the names of the students who placed third and second were announced. The audience buzzed with excitement as both the third and second place winners accepted their placements with bright smiles. And now, the announcement of the grand prize. Aria and I held our hands together, watching the stage with bated breath. And the grand prize goes to Freshman Mila. Yes. Amazing. Mila won the grand prize. Our cheers were drowned out by the applause around us. Even so, Mila turned toward us and smiled. Mila, congratulations. As the grand prize winner, you'll be featured in a magazine wearing an outfit designed by Alec. Alec was ushered onto the stage by the staff and asked for a comment. Congratulations on winning the grand prize, Mila. I will make sure to create an outfit that befits such a wonderful woman. You can look forward to it. He said, a completely different person from earlier. Aria clenched her teeth in anger. The nerve of him. There you have it, Mila. Exciting, right? The host turned the microphone toward Mila, who responded with a radiant smile. No, I won't be wearing Alec's designs. The room fell silent, as if time itself had stopped. A moment later, whispers and gasps filled the auditorium. Aria and I exchanged looks of surprise. The host, momentarily stunned, brought the microphone back to her lips. What do you mean by that? I won the grand prize wearing my father's design. So, if the magazine permits, I would like to wear my father's outfit for the photo shoot. Silence gripped the hall once more. The host and Alec were left speechless, mouths agape. But Alec quickly recovered, trying to maintain his composure as he questioned Mila. Are you saying you didn't like my designs? Yes, I did try on one of your outfits, and it was certainly well made. But wearing my father's outfit now, the feeling is completely different. Come on, you're talking about an amateur's work. Besides, I have no desire to wear the clothes of someone as deceitful and consumed by jealousy as you. Alec's polite facade finally cracked. How dare a mere student talk down to me? You think you understand my designs? I don't need to. You're just someone who got famous by stealing my father's work. Mila's words, amplified by the microphone, reached everyone in the auditorium. The audience was baffled, not knowing whether to believe her. Ha, what nonsense are you spouting now? Trying to drag me down with baseless claims? It's not baseless. It's the truth. Oh, really? If you're so confident, where's your proof? Alec sneered as he leaned in to whisper in Mila's ear. There are media people here, you know. If you're lying, I'll sue you for defamation. It'll be the end for you and your family. But Mila just smiled smugly. Don't worry. I have proof. She pulled out her smartphone and held it up to the microphone. You're Casey's daughter, right? I saw that awful outfit you wore. It was unmistakably Alec's voice. She had recorded their earlier conversation. Stepping on stage in such a tacky, cheap-looking outfit, what were you thinking? That's why when I stole your designs, you could only cry about it. Pathetic. Hey. Alec's face turned pale, and he lunged at Mila, trying to grab her phone. But she deftly dodged him, causing Alec to stumble and fall spectacularly on the stage. I refuse to wear the clothes of someone who mocks others' work and has a history of stealing my father's designs. Mila shouted boldly, no longer needing a microphone. Alec scrambled to his feet and raised his fist toward Mila. But security stepped in and restrained him. Alec was dragged off stage, screaming and protesting, and this time, it was Mila who scoffed at him. My father lost his job and quit being a designer because of him. And he hid this from me all this time to protect my dream. I can see just how much my father still takes pride in his work and how skilled he is through this outfit. I respect my father deeply. My dream is to become a model who can walk on big stages. But now, it's changed a little. I want to wear my father's designs on the stage. Thank you all for today. As Mila bowed, the audience erupted into applause and cheers. Aria and I joined in, clapping as hard as we could. It turned out that right after taking the photo with me earlier, Mila had intended to record a video with the two of us. Just then, Alec had shown up, and in her shock, she had forgotten to stop recording. As a result, she had a clear recording of Alec's face and his incriminating words. This recording was promptly sent to his office and associates as evidence. So, this was the good idea Mila had mentioned. When I asked her what she would have done if she hadn't won the grand prize, she simply said that with her mother's taught poses, her father's outfit, and her own presence, there was no way she wouldn't win. Aria agreed, saying that a model needed to have that kind of confidence. The events of the homecoming queen spread far and wide. It was revealed that Alec's past designs were plagiarized and originally mine. This led to the identification and punishment of those in the publishing industry who had been swayed by money back then. Of course, Alec faced lawsuits from various parties for numerous falsehoods and fraudulent activities. Initially, his fans and major clients defended him, but the more they dug, the more dirt they found, making it impossible to support him any longer. How he'll pay the damages and what he'll do with his life from now on, I have no idea. Well, he might even face arrest for copyright infringement, so there's no point in me worrying about it. As for Mila, her poise, love for her family, and the courage to confront Alec have earned her much praise. She received many offers from talent and entertainment agencies. She turned down full-time offers since she's focused on becoming a model, but she now appears on TV and in magazines on short-term contracts. And me. After receiving so much praise from Mila, I've decided to return to the world of design. Her words gave me the confidence to push forward, and I want to repay her for that. To do so, I need to hone my skills for when she officially starts her modeling career. I started my own design office. Aria, who had been working in a corporate job, decided to use her experience to help with the administrative work. I felt a bit guilty for making her leave her company, but she was overjoyed about my return to designing. Thanks to Mila's speech at the Homecoming Queen event, my name made a comeback, and I received apologies from my former clients. Nowadays, I'm so busy that I'm occasionally invited to the university as a special instructor for students. Thanks to the kindness of Professor Tanner. The name of my design company is Cinderella. Mila insisted on it, saying it was the perfect name. Because you made me a Cinderella, Dad. Thinking of Mila's beaming smile as she said that, I find myself today, once again, designing clothes to turn her into a princess. I had once abandoned this path because I couldn't trust people. But my daughter cleared away the darkness that clouded my heart and opened a new way forward for me. Now, I have a wife and daughter I can trust completely. With the two of them by my side, I can do anything. Yes, perhaps I should make a dress for Aria's birthday. I can feel that the creative passion within me is more vibrant than ever. Having seen the ugliness in people, I now deeply understand how precious my family's light is to me. I am truly grateful to both of them. I want to continue cherishing my family and be someone they can always be proud of.